Hello and welcome to another video. Now, as I've mentioned before, I grew up in the Southwest US. Now, one thing pretty much that is extremely popular in, the United States across the US is Mexican food. And I don't mean Tex-Mex. Tex-Mex is popular too, but real Mexican food from south of the border is sort of the closest thing you'll find to a universal comfort food for people in the United States. So I'm presenting some Mexican food here today. I'll present more another time. The dish I'm going to present today is called chile colorado. Chile colorado basically means red chilies. Red chili. And so this is beef that is stewed in a red chili sauce until it's tender, flavorful. It has a wonderful set of complex flavors. We'll talk a little bit about how these come from. And we'll also talk a little bit about the chili peppers used to provide the different dimensions to this dish. As a note, some people do add tomatoes to this. And in fact, I used to add them quite a lot. But today, I'm going to do a very minimalistic version, and we will just simply talk about some of the things people add sometimes. So there are some very basic ingredients here. We have, of course, meat, some garlic, onions, salt, of course. What I have here is what we call in English cumin. In German it's Kreuzkümmel, which means cross caraway, but it's definitely a very, very different spice. And oregano. Now, some people will add other spices. I've had it where it was flavored with nutmeg and some other things as well. It's very good that way, but I'm not going to add any today. Then I have my chili peppers. And I have a very nice big ancho chili. And I'm not really sure what these are, but they have amazing flavor, and they are they're very they're moderately spicy. I don't think they're guajillos. Guajillos, I think, have a shinier skin, but whatever these are, they're very good. So I'm going ahead and using them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my chilies on a hot pan. You can add just a little bit of vegetable oil here if you want. I'm not going to, but I'm going to roast them slightly until the skin gets a bit blistered. So this can take a few minutes, but it's going to heat up the chilies and it's going to awaken the flavors in some very nice ways. So I'll come back when this is done. So now these are started to get soft, and if you look here, you can see that the skin is blistering. So now I'm going to take them out, and I'm going to soak them under boiling water. So now it's been about 20 minutes, and these have partly rehydrated a little bit. Now, what a lot of people will do is they'll take all of this stuff and put it in a blender and make it real smooth. The only problem is I don't have a blender, which is fine. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to chop these really finely. You could also then grind them in a molcajete or other mortar and pestle. But in this case, I think usually when I've made it, I've just chopped them finely, and that seems to work relatively well. So I'm going to chop them finely. I'm going to return these to the water. I've taken the 20 minutes where I was waiting for that to do my prep. I've cut the meat into smaller pieces. I've basically diced the onion, and I've chopped the garlic, and I've put a bit of fat in the pan on the stove to get things cooking. So once I have these chopped, we'll be right back. Okay, so now these have been chopped up pretty finely, and they're still sitting in the water here. And so when I pour this water and stuff in, it's going to boil, and slowly everything but the very skins will dissolve. Okay, so into this relatively hot pan, well, I guess it's not that hot yet. I'm going to add my onions. It doesn't have to be super hot when you add them, but we're going to just start to cook the onions down a little bit. And once they start to cook a little bit, I will add the garlic and the meat. So I'll come back once these are nicely sizzling and starting to cook down, and we'll add more. Okay, so now the onions are starting to sizzle. I'm going to cook them for a little bit longer until they start to boil, until they start to cook down. Then I will add the garlic, the seasonings, and then a few minutes later, the beef. Okay, so the onions are just starting to cook down a little bit. So I'm going to add the garlic and stir that in nicely. I'm going to add my oregano. I'm just going to give it a decent sprinkling. And just a bit of cumin. That should be good. And then we're going to stir these together. I think I'm going to add a little more oregano than that, actually. And I'm going to let these cook together for a bit while the onions and stuff cook down a bit, and then I'll add the meat. So now the onions are nicely in the translucent phase, and so I'm going to add my meat. I'm going to cook these under a hot pan while basically on hot heat while the meat sears nicely all the way through. And then once that's done, I'll come back and I will add the chili peppers and start the stewing process. So now the meat is all reasonably seared, and so we could actually use all this with a little bit of salt for taco meat almost. But I'm going to go ahead and now add these chili peppers in the water. And I'm going to go ahead and stir this in, and then I'm going to add more liquid so that the meat is just barely covered. And of course, salt. And I'm going to let this simmer slowly for quite a while, and I'll just top up the liquid when it needs to be topped up. Later I'll decide if I want to add just a little bit of tomato paste or not. If you want to work with fresh tomatoes, you could add a fresh tomato here, and it will slowly cook into the dish and dissolve. But yeah, but I'm not going to add a fresh tomato today. And so, if this has been cooking for another couple hours, I did decide to add some tomato paste in order to thicken it up. At some point you should taste it. If it's too spicy for you, and it's still not thickened up to where you want it, then add tomato paste and water. Tomatoes here form the counter point, if you will, to the tomatillos in salsa verde. So I think it's perfectly fine to add them here. At any rate, you'll get this really wonderful, rich sauce that's perfectly infused the meat. This is going to have a wonderful flavor, and I think I'm going to go ahead and do a basic presentation of it and a taste test. Now, traditionally, this is served with Mexican rice and refried beans, and then tortillas, of course, on the side. Everything comes with tortillas. So, For this point, I'm just going to do this very basic bit here for a taste test. But if this was a full meal, you'd probably have Mexican rice, refried beans. And of course, I have videos on the refried beans and the corn tortillas. So at some point, maybe I'll do Mexican rice also. Anyway, now for the taste test. And now for the taste test. Like many Mexican foods, you can, of course, pick it up with a tortilla. And I'm just going to do that. This is really, really good. This takes me right back to all the times I've had dishes like this growing up. And I guess I'd just add the flavors of the chili peppers here are just wonderfully complex, and this is just delicious. Nothing else I can say about it. I hope you enjoy it too.